People who won/inherited/earned a large amount of money in a short amount of time. What was the biggest change? Story 1. Fixing things is no longer about the cheapest way to do it yourself, but about weighing a good DIY solution versus just writing a check and being done with it. E.g., a tree needs to be cut down. Without money, you think about what saw you can use or borrow. Renting is a last resort, but viable. With money, you think that owning a chainsaw would be useful, so maybe you should buy one. Beyond that, do I really want to drop this thing myself? Or should I just find someone to do it for $500? As a specific answer, I now pay someone to cut my grass. Story 2. Not me, but my sister. 2017, she had no permanent residence, bouncing from couch to couch. She was working for minimum wage, just keeping herself afloat. Something happened, and my nephew, son of a different sister, was taken into protective custody, and she and I took on the responsibility together. I moved them into my house, which was really small, so they had to share the living room. She worked really hard and saved to get a tiny apartment for them, struggled to furnish it and pay the bills, but she did it. Then another one of my sisters OD'd on heroin with my niece present. Luckily for her, there was Narcan on hand and someone smart enough to administer it. So my niece was also taken into protective custody, and my sister took her on as well. The money from CPS and state benefits helped, but they still struggled. Then, in 2019, her estranged bio father committed suicide, and the trust fund that her bio grandfather set up was passed down to his only living relative, my sister. Literally overnight, she became a very well-off person. She owns a really nice house now, has a new car. Her backyard is like a paradise for my nephew and the 2 other foster kids she took in. My niece ended up back with her mom after she completed rehab, etc., and she never has to work again. They want for absolutely nothing. No one deserved it more than her. Story 3. A company I was vested with sold. I made well into the 7 figures. Didn't touch it for a year at the advice of a business mentor. It was probably the best advice I've ever gotten. It really stopped any potential lifestyle creep in its tracks. Now I don't have to take shit at work and can spend as much time with my kids as I want. Story 4. People turn up out of the woodwork when they hear you have a lot of money. When I signed a massive deal at the company I owed, and I assume my mom told a bunch of people, suddenly friends and family I hadn't heard from in years wanted to spend time together. Same when my mom passed away. In both cases, I wanted to think it was for altruistic reasons, but the timing was just too convenient. The interaction between my existing friend group who also knew about these events did not change. Edit. Thank you, Reddit, for doing exactly what would be expected of you. Story 5. We inherited a substantial amount of money recently. We knew there was an inheritance coming, but it was easily 3x what we thought it was. My day-to-day life didn't change. I still work, same job, as does my husband. Everything is the same, except relief when thinking about the future, which is huge. We took half and put it in an account for our kids. Their college, grad school, etc. are completely paid for. We then took the other half and hired an advisor we know well to invest it for our retirement. The plan is to park it until we both stop working, still decades away. We also cut big checks to our beloved niece for school in the future, and 2 charities that are close to our hearts. The thought that our future is secure is breathtakingly amazing. Story 6. Nothing changed for us. Matriarch of the family realized nobody is really financially educated enough to handle a change from middle class to that, so she proposed everyone puts their slice of the cake into state bonds. ATM, the gains beat inflation by a good bit. We're not American. And that's what everybody did. We all essentially tossed the can 5 years down the road and are living exactly the same as before. Story 7. Motorcycle accident with truck in 2016. TBI, broke right arm, helicoptered to ICU, breathing tube, and feeding tube rehab for years to get my mind functioning again. Lawyered up and got $300K from the trucking company. I'm making my monthly mortgage payments from that money. It's a house, but good God, I would never want anyone to ever go through what I or my family who supported me the whole way went through. Story 8. I inherited about $500,000 from my dad plus some real estate. After I bought a house and a car, I was still left with quite a bit, but I was in a really bad place. My dad's death was very sudden and affected me very badly. So I was wasting money left and right on going on vacations and buying stupid shit and going to fancy dinners. Most of it wasn't left over, and so my life was more or less the same. The only difference was that my family now owned a house and had a couple of nice cars. Story 9. Stress levels before and after. It's like night and day. Being poor is stressful, very stressful. Having money means having options that coincidentally means less worrying about making things work and more focus on actually figuring them out, which leads to more success. You simultaneously have more options while ending up needing plan B less. It's almost cruel. Money doesn't bring happiness, but it absolutely kills 90% of actual real-life day-to-day stress, which kind of paves the way for positive change. Story 10 just received a decent inheritance yesterday. Took 10K of it and left the rest in a compounding interest account to build over time and away from easy reach so I don't blow it all. Used what I did, take it to create an emergency fund, bought myself new clothes and a few new toys like a new gun, paid off $1,500 in credit card debt and probably going to make a larger payment towards my student loans. Still living off of my budget, but being able to fix the AC in my car now, and my bumper is a huge win. The stability and lack of worry is really nice, and being positive on my net worth by multiple thousands of dollars is also really nice, but mostly it's the peace of mind that's doing it for me, and I think I won't spend most of it just because I don't want to give up that peace of mind. Now, I don't have debt payments to make other than just $50 a month, so I've regained a lot of spending power which will let me save faster over time, as well as having a new job with better benefits, and that pays me a $300 bonus once a month for gas and cell phone really makes me feel truly financially stable in my life. Not enough to retire on, but enough to get a solid plan for retirement going and change my life for the better. I'd give it all back if it meant I got to spend one more day with my grandma and aunt, though. Story 11. For years, I would whine about how I couldn't do what I wanted because I had to work to pay the bills. Despite being free of that pressure to make money, I still struggle to do what I want. It's depressing. Edited to add, having to get enough money together to pay rent is the MacGuffin that runs the plot in most people's lives. It's like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. The plot line of your life may not be about money per se, but without it, there is not a cohesive plot. For years, people work shitty jobs because rent, go to college to get better paying jobs, make housing choices because poor, and scrimp and save in hopes of salvation from all this. But if suddenly this way of living is no longer required, the existential problems of meaning do not necessarily abate. If you take away the need to strive just to survive from a person who has lived decades this way, that person may have a hard time reorienting themselves. Even a shitty job provides a community of sorts, even if it's a community of complaint. Scarcity provides a rubric for decision-making. Ask most people what they would do if they did not have to work for money. They will come up with all sorts of fanciful answers. They will talk about going on cruises around the world. They will talk about hiking the Appalachian Trail. They might say something about wanting to travel. Fine. If these far-fetched fantasies come true, eventually one must decide how to live after taking the cruise, the long hike, or the long-delayed European tour. What shall I dedicate myself to? One asks oneself in such a circumstance, and without practice at exercising so much freedom, coming up with an earnest answer takes great effort. Story 12. I'm an independent contractor, and my job requires a lot of travel, and for years I made decent money, but it was never really enough to own a home or really even have my own place. I got to a point where I signed a contract with a massive bonus and all these perks, and essentially went from making slightly more than your average middle manager to clearing $1 million in less than a year. It was literally a life-changing opportunity. The biggest change was just being able to do all the things I held off on doing because I never had the money. I was finally able to buy a home. I bought one for my younger brother too, helped him start his own business, and now he's co-owner of a logistics and shipping company. My sister is disabled and I was finally able to get her into an amazing long-term care facility. Several of my best friends work with me and their lives changed in similar ways. In 2 years' time, I didn't just make my own life better, but I helped make the lives of some of the people I care about the most in this world significantly better. People that say money doesn't buy happiness are ridiculous. Story 13. Not a massive amount, maybe half a year's salary, but honestly, the biggest change has been not worrying quite so much about life, which in turn leads to me being better with my day-to-day money, which means that I feel better because I'm not quite running to the end of the account each month. It's a little thing, and I wouldn't say that it is happiness per se, but I guess money can at least buy a little of the stress off. Story 14. If this ever happens to you, tell none of your friends. Only tell people making more money than you who you can consult, and maintain skepticism of everyone who comes near you. Anticipate jealousy, envy, gossip, users, and opportunists, etc. Seriously, biggest lesson of my life. Seriously expect D-bags to come at you with everything they have. Carry a very large bat in your back pocket. Invest in Acme Bear Tracks. Just kidding. but you get the point. Money makes people that don't have it creepy. Story 15. I inherited money from my grandparents after their passing. The biggest change was that, for once in my life, I was able to breathe and not worry about if I'd have enough for groceries, if I had enough for rent, etc. I could actually buy things I needed for once, like glasses and clothes. Unfortunately, around the same time, my father started having financial issues and constantly needing help, and my inheritance has long since run out. It sucks because I really could use that money right now with what's going on in my life. I keep praying for a miracle, but it never comes. I'm glad I was able to help my father, but still. Story 16. I inherited about $20,000 from a deceased relative unexpectedly, and nothing much changed for me except my peace of mind. It wasn't life-changing money, and in fact I didn't spend a dime of it, but it made a nice seed for investment, and that investment has done reasonably well, so I have a nice nest egg that is slowly growing. The big thing is that I'm disabled and on a fixed income, so it's so fucking nice to know that if some unexpected expense comes along, it's not going to wipe me out or put me in debt over my head that I'll never escape. Story 17. I see this all the time. Unfortunately, my anecdotal experience is that most people who get windfalls that didn't have wealth already burn through it, to the point where I don't want to work with these folks anymore, no matter how big the dollar figure is. I try and explain to beneficiaries that the wealth they are receiving can be life-changing if they are responsible with it. The elect not to be, most of the time. Whether it's hundreds of thousands or millions, somehow these people suddenly figure out how to burn through all of it within a few years. Unholy vehicles, unnecessary homes/renovations, gambling. I've seen people who were saving money, then get inheritances, then suddenly need to spend $20K, $50K/mo, and they can't even articulate what they're spending it on, just dumb shit. Don't be these people, if you get a windfall. Story 18. Not quite as much as some, but inherited about $50K when my mom passed. We talked before she passed and agreed that money was to help me finish college, because she knew my dad wouldn't help. Proud to say I worked part-time and used part of that money to cover living expenses while in school. Made it last 4 years and I graduated with a bachelor's in nursing. 1000% would spend it the same way again. Story 19. I inherited $200K when my grandmother passed a few years ago. Enough to get me out of the poverty cycle. Not enough to buy a house or live off of for a substantial amount of time. I set aside most of it, but gave myself the luxury of a decent chunk of spending money. With that money, you may think I bought a bunch of silly things, and I did, but I mostly used it getting good quality things that will make life easier and last a while. A chest freezer, nice dresser and side tables, a decent fridge, clothes that fit me and look good. I also had the privilege of helping my community so much. Being able to just drop a couple hundred to buy a friend hearing aids or get someone's not cheap prescription is amazing. I've been very lucky and my community doesn't take advantage. They're aware I will always help, but they use it as a last resort safety net. 3 years later, I have half of it left. Without the constant stress of affording everything, I was able to figure out what I want to do with my life. And now that money will be supporting me as I study the next few years. Story 20. Missing my parent mostly. I'm in my 30s, and the only parent in my life died in their 60s. I inherited a total estate in the high 6 to low 7 figures USD. Sure, I ended up with a paid-off house, college funds for the kids, newer cars, the house fixed up, an emergency fund, and some investments in the mid-6 figures, but now the only close family I have is the one I made. I'd trade all of the financial security for my parent back easily and honestly. It's not enough for me to never worry about money again either, since I still have decades to live, probably, live in a high tax state and inflation. I suspect there will always be that what-if worry about money. I still work, although I'm not as worried about losing my job as I was before, and my job is very easy. I need the medical benefits for sure. I ate pretty bad, my drug of choice, for the first 18 months after they died, so I'm getting that weight off, but otherwise I get random bouts of sadness when alone. Story 21. The ability to actually do things. We paid off debts, I bought my dream couch, a new mattress, the bed my daughter always wanted. Then, on top of that, being able to actually do a true vacation. It has been great, but since having money, I've had to get rid of a lot of friends. Well, you have the money. Why don't you always buy dinner? Dude, I've paid the last 3. I shouldn't have to every single time. My friends group has definitely gotten smaller due to people always begging, asking, expecting money. Story 22. I inherited a large chunk of money after my dad passed. About half went into savings for retirement and into my son's 529. With the rest, I paid my mom back for college tuition she paid, and for a used car she helped me buy when someone totaled my car parked in front of our house. I am also taking her to Hawaii for a week in June. She worked really hard to raise my brother and I without any help from my dad after they divorced, so it felt right to pay her back for the things, with his money, that propelled me forward in life. We also paid off my husband's car. The rest will be used to pay off my house and get some upgrades done. It's kind of few money, but not enough to drastically change my day-to-day life. It's more like, we can do that and not have to finance it money. Story 23, HAA, the quality of life. Imagine all the stress you have to wake up with over making rent and paying all the utilities, the car insurance, the health insurance, the food, the meds, all of that stress, just not there. You pay all of it in 1 month when it's due, and you don't have to worry about it. You can take a day, week, month off work, or quit entirely like I did for a year, and not even have to worry about any of that shit. You get to do what makes you happy for change, whatever it may be. I preferred to spend my days training at the gym and then going to the wellness center for recovery. The anxiety goes away, or at least quiets down, and because now you have the time and ability to do what makes you happy and feeds your soul, the depression isn't so bad either. Your overall health improves, and you find yourself less bitter and less pessimistic about life in general. Yeah, that's what having money is actually like. I got a big payout from residuals from a film I did. Not rich, but enough to survive for over a year like this. I can definitely prove to you that money does, in fact, but happiness. And it's not because of the stuff you can buy, it's because of the stuff you don't have to worry about. Car makes a weird noise? You just take it to the shop. Want to have a nice steak dinner just because? You just fucking do it. Need groceries? You get to go to the store without having to check your bank account. It is better. Anyone who says otherwise is a fucking liar and wants to keep you poor.